Have you ever had a friend turn foe? A person who committed somewhat of an ultimate betrayal towards you? Well, that's exactly what this story is about, betrayal. It involves longtime friends Sir Jean de Carouge and Jacques Legris, and also Jean's wife Margaret de Carouge. Now, there are 3 questions you're going to want to ask yourself here. What exactly was the ultimate betrayal between these 2 men? What brought them to despise each other so much? And in the end, who is telling the truth? What's up, guys? I'm Paula, and welcome to Medieval Stories. This story takes place in Normandy, France in the 14th century, and it begins with Jean de Carouge and Jacques Legris. Carouge had just recently lost his wife and son. His dear friend Jacques was there for him through it all. Not to mention, Jacques was godfather to Jean's son. Jean and Jacques were both members of Count Pierre's court in Argentan. Count Pierre was also cousin to the king, King Charles V, and soon to be King Charles VI, who was crowned at just 11 or 12 years old. Now, although Jean and Jacques were very good friends, Jacques and Pierre were very close, which you'll learn about their relationship later on. Soon after Jean lost his wife and son, he went to risk his own life in battle. And it's been said that the Carouge bloodline has always been kind of violent. He joined the royal campaign in 1379, and it lasted about 5 months or so. After risking his life time and again in battle, Jean realized he was jeopardizing his name and his family line. His brother had become a priest, and his sister lost their family name upon marrying her husband. It was all on Jean to continue the Carouge family legacy. He knew he would have to find a wife soon, so that's exactly what he set out to do. Getting married back in those times wasn't just about wooing and romance. It was seen as a business surrounding what land, money, and power you would have, along with family alliances and production of heirs. So in spring of 1380, Jean found his bride, an heiress. Her name, Margaret. She was the only daughter of Robert de Thibouville and was a part of an old Norman family. Now, Jean did have his doubts upon marrying Margaret. Her father had betrayed the kings of France not once but twice before she was born, causing Margaret to grow up a traitor's daughter. How did Robert redeem himself? Well, in 1470, he became a military captain of the fortress Vernon. He also went on to sell his estate in 1377 to Count Pierre, a new Le Faucon, which he then gifted to Jacques. Margaret's dowry, which is property brought by a bride to her husband on their marriage, included everything that Jean could have wanted except a new Le Faucon, which he so desperately craved. In those 3 years ago, when Count Pierre gifted Jacques this piece of land, Jean knew this meant in Pierre's eyes he preferred Jacques over himself. But he didn't know then that Jacques possessing this land would come at his own expense. So Jean immediately filed a lawsuit in an attempt to get back a new Le Faucon. After hearing about this, Count Pierre went to his cousin, the king, to make sure this piece of land was seen as a gift to one of his vassals, Jacques. So the king referred to the estate as an irrevocable gift, resulting in Jean losing the case. After that, he was seen as an envious and contentious man. He had been antithetical towards Count Pierre, his liege lord, and he also offended his old friend Jacques. The once great friendship between these two had weakened amongst their rivalry at Pierre's court. It's been said that Jacques didn't even attend the wedding between Jean and Margaret. He could have easily just not been invited, but he might not have wanted to be there due to the quarrel between the two. So Jacques had never officially met Margaret until much later. A few years had passed and Jacques continued to evolve within Count Pierre's court, while Jean simply didn't. Jean's father had died in 1382, and another disagreement broke out between he and Pierre. Pierre had chosen not to give Jean the captaincy of Belém, which was his father's post that was expected to be passed down to him once his father passed. Pierre thought Jean to be unworthy and gave it to another man. So now, Jacques had captaincy over a new Le Faucon, while Jean's captaincy was snatched away from him, causing him to sink even lower in Pierre's court. Eventually, Jean had come to believe Jacques was the person in Pierre's ear, basically plotting his demise in order to keep himself on top. Jean then tried to cut ties with the court altogether. By this time, Margaret had gotten used to hearing her husband talk about Jacques and how he felt about him. Later on in 1384, Jean and Margaret got invited to La Fête-Marseillaise to join in the celebration of his friend Jean Crespin and his wife's newly born son. After being at the party for a while, Jean then realized that Jacques was invited. The 2 men made eye contact from across the room, and everybody watched as they approached each other, still keeping in mind the conflict they've had in their relationship in the past. Then, unexpectedly, Jean extended his right hand to Jacques, and they both shook hands saying,
Carouge, Legree.
After the two men made up, Jean then took Jacques to meet his wife. Upon introducing the two, Jean told Margaret to kiss Jacques on the lips to represent a sign of renewed peace and friendship. Both Margaret and Jacques were very surprised. Jacques had heard about Margaret and her beauty, but had never actually seen her due to the quarrel between he and her husband. It is believed that Jacques' interest towards Margaret was stemmed from this moment. In 1385, Jean was set to go on another campaign, so Margaret had to stay with her father. Jean's departure made Margaret apprehensive. She had wondered if Jean was tired of her after being married for 5 years. She still hadn't produced any heirs for him, which was one of the reasons why he married her. But Jean himself claimed he loved his wife dearly. When he returned to Margaret in 1385, his health was really bad and his money low. He had spent a lot of it on his adventure, having expectations that his investment would pay off. The only upside to this brutal journey was that Jean returned a night. After they left Margaret's dad's, they headed to Capomesnil, where Jean's widowed mother, Dame Nicole, lived. Jean then set out on yet another journey, ignoring the bad weather and his poor health. He had some unpaid debts and some wages that were in arrears, so he was in desperate need of more money and did everything he could to obtain it. As he set out to Paris, he made a plan to stop in Argentine. Maybe he had hopes that the court would welcome him back with open arms. Or maybe he wanted to brag about his newly received knighthood. The court had heard of some nobles being killed in battle, and so they obviously thought Jean was one of them, having heard nothing about his whereabouts. And Count Pierre may have been glad to be rid of him. Once Jean entered the court, they were surprised to see him, and somewhat displeased. Upon joining the other court members, Jean may have told them about his plans to go to Paris, and that he was leaving Margaret along with his mother in Capomesnil. In that day at the court, something happened between Jean and Jacques, opening old wounds. So after hearing about Jean's plans to go to Paris, Jacques called upon one of his closest companions, Adam Louvel. It's said that Adam served as a procurer to Jacques, which is someone who obtains a prostitute for another person. And he also served under Jean once. Louvel had a house in Capomesnil very close to Jean's mother's chateau. No one really knows why Jacques decided to turn his attention and efforts towards Margaret. Maybe, upon possessing a piece of land that was a part of her dowry wasn't enough, and now he wanted the woman herself. Or maybe it was less about Margaret and more about getting back at her husband, having not forgotten nor forgiven Jean for trying to take a new Le Falcon away from him. Jean's long absence may have given Jacques an awful idea. If he could covertly bed Margaret, that would be the ultimate vengeance. Given the intention that she would be receptive towards him, he set out on his terrible mission. About 2 weeks after Jean left for Paris, Dame Nicole was called to St. Pierre to appear in a legal case. The date was set for January 18, 1386. This trip meant she would be gone for half a day, keeping in mind that Margaret is still there with her. Adam Louvel learned about this news and sent information to Jacques. That morning, Dame Nicole left for St. Pierre, taking nearly all of her servants with her, even one that Jean specifically ordered to stay by Margaret's side day in and day out. Only one maidservant stayed behind, but she wasn't really around. A little after Nicole left, there was a loud pounding on the chateau's door. When Margaret went to open the door, it startled her to see a man's face staring at her from the other side. It was Adam Louvel. She immediately asked what he wanted, and he said he needed to ask a favor. So she was like, okay, ask it. He then proceeded to ask if he could come inside first, being that it was so terribly cold outside. Margaret had recognized him from serving under Jean in a campaign, and she also knew that he lived nearby, so she opened the door. He had asked if he could have more time paying back a loan that he had got from Jean. Margaret had no idea about the loan, and she also found it a little suspicious that he came to her about it, being that her husband was away in Paris. But before she could say anything on the matter, Adam quickly changed the subject. He told her that he had greetings from Jacques Legree, who asked him to send his compliments to her. He went on to say that the squire loved her passionately and would do anything for her, and that he really needed to speak to her. Unnerved by the sudden turn in conversation, Margaret told him that she didn't want to see nor speak to Jacques. Then all of a sudden, the door was pushed open by one Jacques Legree. He then took off his dirty cape, exposing his dagger he wore on his side. Margaret was terrified. Jacques then went on to repeat everything Louvel had just told her. Margaret told him that he shouldn't speak to her in that manner, and that she did not feel the same way he felt about her. The altercation then became very physical. He then forced her to sit beside him, telling her he knew all about their money troubles, and that he could easily restore the Carouge family name if she would just let him have his way with her. He was used to doing things this way when it came to dealing with women, but Margaret was a married woman of honor, not a prostitute. Realizing she wouldn't go about this willingly, Jacques signaled for Lavelle to bar the door while he forced her upstairs. Margaret started to shout for help as loud as she could, but the maidservant had already made herself scarce. Jacques and Adam both struggled to get Margaret upstairs, and when they finally did, Margaret then swore to Jacques that he would tell her husband what he did to her and that he would avenge her. After that, he had had his way with her against her will, fulfilling his awful desires. After he finished, all Margaret could do was lay there and weep. Jacques looked down at her and said if she told anyone about what happened, she would be dishonored. And if John heard about it, he would want to kill her. Jacques wouldn't say anything about it, and he expected Margaret to do the same. She told him that she would keep quiet, but not for long. He assured her that she was alone in all of this, and Lavelle would act as his witness, also telling her that he made sure to cover his tracks. And after saying all this, they were gone. Medieval laws and records show that acts committed like the ones against Margaret were seen as a capital offense and a felony. The punishment for one of these acts was for one to be dragged through the streets and hanged. Margaret kept thinking about Jacques' words about basically planning to destroy her honor if she came out about this. If she publicly accused Jacques, the charge would be almost impossible to prove. She was already known as the traitor's daughter and also the wife to Jean, who was one of the most troublesome vassals in Count Pierre's court, and Jacques was Pierre's favorite, so naturally he would believe Jacques. Not to mention that Pierre was the cousin to the king. The odds were just not in her favor. Jean finally returned home, and he quickly noticed that his wife was in a down and troubled state. Her expression often seemed sad, and she wasn't her usual self. Jean thought something may have happened between her and his mother while he was gone, but that was not it. And Margaret decided to hold off on telling him until they were both completely alone. So once they were finally alone, Margaret told him everything that happened to her. Jean couldn't believe it. He was outraged. She desperately wanted him to seek vengeance for his own honor, which would either stand or fall with hers. So the next day, he called his family and friends to get together for a secret council. Margaret had to explain to them everything that happened, in all of its humiliating details. There was another major detail in all this chaos. Margaret was pregnant. She and John were married for 5 years, and she never once got pregnant. Naturally, a husband would be happy that his wife finally produced an heir for him. But there is one taunting question hovering over them. Whose child was it? After Count Pierre heard about this accusation towards Jacques, he was infuriated. How could Jean and Margaret accuse him of such a ridiculous and horrific crime? Jacques was Pierre's beloved vassal, and he would do anything for him. Lawfully, Pierre had to agree to give Jean and Margaret a hearing. After all, he was responsible for resolving issues between his vassals. On the day of the hearing, surprisingly, Jean and Margaret didn't show. This then allowed Pierre to make his next move. Pierre ordered Adam Lavelle to be arrested and detained for questioning. Whatever info they got from Adam was used in Jacques' favor. Pierre also said that Margaret must have dreamt the attack. And no one knows why Jean and Margaret didn't attend the hearing. Why didn't they attend the hearing? After Jean and Margaret heard about the verdict, they were not surprised, but enraged all the same. The law states that if a vassal saw the Count's verdict as unfair, he had a right to appeal the case to his overlord, which in Count Pierre's case was King Charles VI. If the king agreed to hear Jean and Margaret's case, it could mean another chance at justice for his wife and himself. French law stated that a nobleman such as John appealing a case to the king had a right to challenge his opponent to trial by combat. It was used to determine which party had sworn a false oath. The combat's outcome was believed to reveal the truth in correspondence with God's will. John would put everything at risk going forward with this duel, including his wife. If John lost, it meant Margaret lied under oath and she would be put to death. Still in all, John felt this was the only way to seek justice and avenge the crime against his wife. After Jean appealed his case to the king, Jacques was summoned to appear before the Parliament of Paris. Both men had to provide a testimony for Parliament to decide if the duel was even necessary. They both would go on to tell their own stories, in which Jacques claimed he only met Jean's wife that one time at Jean Crespin's party. He also went on to tell Parliament about his and Count Pierre's falling out with Jean, saying how he became more hostile towards them. Jean would then go on to say how he believed Jacques gained feelings for Margaret on that day whenever he asked his old friend to kiss Margaret on the lips to signal the new friendship and to let bygones be bygones. He also testified everything Margaret told him about that day of the assault. It had been around 10 months or so since they came forward with the alleged crime, but on September 5th, 1386, Parliament had reached their decision. Trial by combat between John de Carouge and Jacques Legris would definitely take place. The date set for the duel was November 27, 1386. Margaret was already near her due date when they made the decision in September, so by the time of the duel, she would have already had her baby. There was an ancient custom that was followed in the 14th century, and that was if John was put to death in the duel, Margaret would be burned alive. Now, although the duel was set to take place in November, King Charles pushed it until December 29th. The king had set out to invade England around the time the decision was made for the duel. He was a big fan of jousting and often participated in tournaments himself, so of course he wouldn't dream of missing these two men in combat. Now the date for the duel had finally arrived, and both men had armored up in preparation. This included horses, swords, daggers, axes, and shields. Thousands of people crowded the grounds in anticipation of the fight. But before anything started, the two men had to give an oath and say their last words. Margaret rode out in her carriage draped in all black, and she was also dressed in all black. She was front and center to witness the two men battle it out to the death, awaiting her fate. The duel finally begins, and the two men charge each other with no hesitation. They locked axes a couple times, trying to make one another fall off their horse. Then with his axe, Jacques hit John's shield, resulting in it sliding off onto the horse's neck and slicing through its spine. This sent John tumbling down. He now had to battle on foot. So what did John do? He returned the favor by striking Jacques' horse on his belly, sending the horse to the ground. Now they were both on foot, and it came to be a fair fight. John had developed a fever that morning, so he started to feel weak, and the heavy armor they had to wear for the duel didn't help at all. Jacques had found an opening and stuck his sword in John's leg. This put him at high risk of losing the duel. Then John had found a chance to get back at Jacques, and he took it. But before striking him on top of his helmet, he shouted,
This day shall decide our quarrel.
Jacques fell to the ground, and because his armor was so heavy, he couldn't get up, let alone pick up his own weapon. John had now straddled Jacques with his knees on both sides of his chest, while Jacques desperately shifted side to side to free himself of this lock that could possibly lead fatal to him. John then shouted,
Confess your crime.
All Jacques could do was shake his head no and say,
In the name of God and on the peril of damnation of my soul, I am innocent of this crime.
John then cried out,
Then be you damned.
Jean pulled Jacques' helmet off his head and with no hesitation plunged his dagger into his throat. And suddenly Jacques laid there lifeless and still. Jean got up, turned and looked at Margaret as she wiped away her tears, and they both shared a really long look. He bowed to the king and then shouted to the crowd,
Have I done my duty?
To which everyone shouted,
Oui.
The king gave Jean 1,000 francs for winning and made him a member of his chamber, and he will also receive 200 francs a year for the rest of his life. After this, John and Margaret embraced each other, and that was that. So there you have it, guys. The bad guy reaped what he sowed. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go ahead and do so because I'm going to be posting a lot more consistently on here. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!